Next up, we pitched the shallows for post-spawn walleyes. There's no better feeling than a walleye hitting a jig in shallow water, and today is no exception. Jon Thelen's Destination Fish is brought to you by Lindy Fishing Tackle and Alumacraft Boats. There's a fish, got him. Feels like a pretty good one. Boy, that one just nailed it right there. And all of a sudden, it just stopped. I mean, it was whack and then a dead stop. That's what's so cool about this time of the year in jigs, is when these fish see something come by them that they're interested in, man, they don't hesitate, they just snap it. That's cool too, fishing super line, because you get to feel that bite. Come on up here, buddy. Ooh, good fish. That right there is a post-spawn female. That's an awesome fish. Let's get this one out of here. We'll show her to you, and we'll get her back in water. Look at that. T-bone that shiner. I just switched to a shiner too, just because I decided looking at it, I'd made a bunch of casts and not hooked up. So I went to a bigger minnow, just trying to offer him a little something. I was fishing fatheads, and I'm gonna go back and forth throughout the day, but I went to that big shiner, and that got this fish caught. Look at that. Awesome walleye anywhere you go. Here's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna talk about fish that have just come off the spawn. The ice just went off of this lake a couple days before the Minnesota fishing opener. And these fish, they're ready to go, they're ready to eat. But we're gonna talk about some of the nuances that go into catching fish while you're pitching jigs. There he is right there. When it comes down to this time of the year, there is nothing more effective, in my opinion, when these fish are shallow than pitching a jig. And the reason is that you can work it in so many different speeds and so many different ways. If I were fishing a Lindy rig right now, I'm gonna go as fast as the wind is taking me, or as fast as your trolling motor needs to go if you're in one of those scenarios where you're gonna drift. And then number two is we're fishing really shallow water. Look at that one. That's a great fish. Man, you'd almost swear that one's a male. But that fish right there, I mean, you look at him, he T-boned that little jig, but the reason he did is because I'm able to work it in different cadences, different speeds, all kinds of different actions. Where if I'm just dragging a bait, there's nothing I can do about it. That one's gonna make it to the dinner table. What an awesome fish. We've kind of figured out that there's a few fish in this area, okay? There's a little bit of a break here. Right up here is about 3 feet of water. All I'm doing here is working this edge, and I'm bouncing that jig down. So ultimately, it gives you the ability to fish slower and then speed it up versus say drifting through or trolling through and going the same speed the whole way. Today we are fishing shallow water, 3 to 5 feet in mid-May. The walleyes are aggressive and willing to bite behind the spawn. 1/16 ounce Lindy live bait jigs in blue glow and chartreuse tipped with shiner minnows are the ticket. Water temps are in the low 60s with air temps pushing 70. Winds are light at 5 to 10, and as the wind picks up, so does the bite. There's one, got him. That one thunked it hard. Oh, cool. That is so cool when they do that. There he is. That is fun. Man, I don't know if there's much more fun than jig fishing. Just because of that right there. I mean, this guy, it's all in hand, you know? That to me is just so cool. Another great eater size fish. Hey, let's talk a little bit about color real quick. So if I'm fishing clear water like I am today, this is a pretty clear body of water we're fishing. He can see these jigs from a mile away. So I started my day with a blue glow, and what I'm emulating there is a silver-sided minnow. And then I switched over just a little while ago to this green colored Lindy live bait jig, and the idea behind this is I'm seeing a lot of perch. So I just thought, well, you know, who knows, maybe they're feeding on some of those perch. So I switched over to that green. Now, if I was in dirty water, there's a good chance I'm gonna start with something like an orange, maybe a bright glow, something that they're gonna be able to see and get to from a distance, because here they can see a long ways away and they're tuned in on the colors of the minnows they're feeding on. In dirty water, a lot of times you're just trying to grab a fish's attention because they don't feed on sight nearly as much as a walleye will here. Jon Thelen's Destination Fish is brought to you by these fine sponsors. You may have noticed earlier today when I was getting some jigs out, I have all my jigs in a brand new tackle tray. It's called the Flambeau Slim Ultimate Tough Tainer. Here's what's really cool about this new Slim series. It's got Z-Rust built in, so your hooks aren't gonna rust. That's guaranteed for up to 5 years. And number two, they're only about that tall. Instead of being that tall, they're that tall. And what's cool about that is it takes up less space in storage compartments in your boat, takes up less space in your tackle bag. But then on top of all that, because it's slim in stature, those jigs are gonna bounce around a heck of a lot less while you're banging across the lake. That's gonna keep that paint in a lot better shape. Pretty cool product. You can find it at flambeauoutdoors.com. It's called the Slim Ultimate Tough Tainer series. There he is. Guy just picked it up. That one was really different than the last couple. This one here, I'll tell you what, I never felt him hit it. He just grabbed it. A little bit smaller fish, but you know what? Heck of a good size eater fish if you're looking for some dinner, but you know what? We already got a couple in the well. We'll throw this guy back, and hey, I wanna show you what I'm using here, because I'll tell you what I'm using makes a big difference. Because jig weight, I think, matters so much, and I think so often our go-to is to just grab the heaviest jig we can find, and usually that's a 1/4 ounce jig. I mean, let's face it, everybody's got a ton of 1/4 ounce jigs. And then you go down to an 1/8, and a lot of people think they're really getting lightweight when they go to an 1/8. When you're fishing this shallow stuff that I'm fishing today, you wanna go to a 1/16, and here's why. I'm fishing really slow, but one of the things you don't think about real often when you're thinking about jig fishing is what is your drop rate? And you want your drop rate to be just as slow as what you're trying to fish. Because ultimately, if that jig's coming up and it's so heavy, say it's a 1/4 or an 1/8, that it just drops right back down, it's really hard to fish effectively because your jig gets down and out of that strike zone, you know, that 6 inches to a foot above the bottom. So that 16th ounce Lindy Live bait jig is just an awesome choice whenever I'm fishing something, you know, 8 feet or less. Try to go really light, thinking more about the drop rate than anything else, because ultimately you want to be slow. That Lindy Live bait jig right there is an awesome choice though. New boat for me this year. For a lot of years I ran the Alumacraft Tournament Series boats, and this year I switched over to the big competitor 205. If you're a guy that's fishing multi-species, it's got huge live wells, big water walleye boat, and yet it can be a small water bass boat, huge casting decks. I mean, you name it, it's built into this boat, tons of storage. This thing's the real deal. I got so used to my Tournament Series boats that I didn't really even realize the benefits of this big competitor until I got in. But let me tell you something, this is a do-it-all boat. There is no doubt about it. There he is. Man, it's amazing. Now that wind comes back up and these fish just turn right back on. You know, as much as there was a time earlier here where I was starting to think, oh boy, these fish might not turn back on. Sometimes all it takes, I mean, there's not much wind here, but all of a sudden there's just a little, and it's enough that it's got these fish wound right back up. I'm seeing them up off the bottom on my Mega Live, and here we go again, another great eye. We're gonna throw him in, and we're gonna call it a day. But I'll tell you, if you have the opportunity to get out right behind the spawn, and a lot of times that's right after the Minnesota opener, at that Minnesota opener, don't be afraid to set up in the shallow stuff, find some hard bottom, and just pitch jigs around and just work it nice and slow. And I'll tell you what, there's fish in here and they're the most overlooked fish on the lake, shallow fish. If you can get on shallow bites, you can usually have them all to yourself. Man, that's a good time right there. Jon Thelen's Destination Fish has been brought to you by these great sponsors.